Hi everyone, my name's Lily. I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and I'm bringing you my mid-year checkup. So basically, I'm just going to tell you what some of my favorite books I've read of 2025 so far are, and I'm going to tell you my favorite book from each month. You know me though, there's going to be caveats, so just grab your favorite cold beverage, because it's so hot, your favorite cold beverage, and let's chat about it. Also, sorry if you can hear any ambient noise. I'm melting. You might be able to hear me dripping. My fan's on, my window's open. I'm going to have to be drinking. I'm very warm right now. Let's start off with January. My first favorite from January was The In-Between Bookstore. I have loved Edward Underhill's books so much. I'm not going to try to go into all of these books in terms of plot and everything like that, just because there are a lot of books to cover. And I've also already talked about each specific book in their monthly wrap-up. So I will link all of the monthly wrap-ups down below. But basically, The In-Between Bookstore was this book about kind of figuring out if you had to leave home to find yourself this whole time. It features a trans main character, and basically he comes back to town and walks through this bookstore that he used to work at and gets transported into the past. So there's a speculative aspect to this one. And what I really loved is that it really looks at home, family, and belonging. He was so convinced that he had to leave to become who he was because his town was not going to accept him. But when he comes back, he kind of realizes, like, oh, did I have to leave? Like, maybe this town was more accepting than I thought. Maybe I had more friends and community than I thought that I had. And so he's looking at those kinds of things, and he also has to confront his past self quite literally. So this was just so heart-wrenching and tender, and I've loved every Edward Underhill book I have read, and so I have to recommend that one. In February, I loved The Rose Bargain. I actually have The Rose Bargain here. I was kind of struggling in January and February with sort of a reading slump, and also, honestly, a little bit of March, which is in the future to when I read The Rose Bargain. But anyway, The Rose Bargain just like cut through all of that haze. I was so swept away by this book. It talks about Big FA. Basically, there's going to be this competition to end up with, is it a king or a prince? End up with a prince, and so all of these girls are competing against each other, but they're competing against each other, and the prince's mom is like a big FA queen, and they have to make all of these intense fae bargains, which are not good for anybody. They're not good for anyone, these fae bargains. And I love the big FA in here. This has like a great mix of historical fiction, kind of, is it Regency-esque? I'm not really sure, but historical fiction time period with also fantasy and the way the world has changed for the fantasy elements. I really, really enjoyed this one. As I said, it kind of broke through a lot of different reading slumps I was having in February. I cannot wait for the next book. It was so good. And if you love Big FA, if you love bargains, and also the ending, like, come back and talk to me. In March, I really loved This Monster of Mine. Let me find it as well. This Monster of Mine. It is this kind of Roman-ish inspired fantasy. Rome-inspired things are not normally my cup of tea, but this is like Roman-inspired in the sense that there's this kind of legal system with judges, and the judges have apprentices, and kind of, I guess, the aesthetics are Roman inspired in some ways, but it's not like super, super Roman inspired. Basically, it is this one where it's intense, where she was pushed off this tower, or like she fell off of this tower and kind of got really, really badly, almost dead, basically, injured, but she's back for revenge to kind of figure out why, because she was lured there and she heard things, and that's why she had to go, and so she's come back all these years, and she's now an apprentice to one of the law people, and she realizes that the voice of the law person sounds really familiar, but why? So that's basically This Monster of Mine's plot. And what I really loved about this one is it really goes into the idea of justice. Like, what would happen in a justice system in which the people who actually needed to, or were the best, had the power, but they also had to be so ruthless. It looks, I guess, about justice. It looks at power and what happens when we have power and what happens when we don't have power, who should have power in this system, and what do we do with that power. It talks a lot about corruption, as you can tell, about betrayal. It is so, so good. I will just say as well, though, that I've seen people kind of chat about this and been like, oh, it's a romantasy. I think, to me, this is more fantasy with some romantic elements to it. The romance is very much not necessarily the sole point of this book, and not necessarily, I think, a plot that kind of is on the same level as fantasy. I've been meaning to kind of talk about romantasy in a future video discussion, but my thoughts aren't baked on that yet. So let me know down below if you'd like to see that. Also in March, I read A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I'm not going to talk about kind of companion novels or sequels in my favorite reads of 2025 so far, but A Witch's Guide is sort of like connected universe to the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. It's also by Sangu Mandana. This one was so good. I loved it. I love how Sangu is so good at combining magical worlds, found families, and the inn. Like, it also talks a lot about power. Basically, she is running this magical inn with, I think, her aunt or some sort of family member, and she has been sort of lost her powers and only has kind of a little bit of the magical powers she used to have because of a can I talk about that? Because of something she did in the past. I'm not going to say exactly what, because I don't know if that's spoiler or not. And basically, she has this inn where kind of everyone finds their way there when they need to. And this guy ends up coming with his sister as a place where he needs to. And he's kind of like, no, we're not going to stay. Like, this is not for us. But then what if it was? So it has this lovely collection of side characters, which has made this found family who've all been there when they needed to, and who will all band together when something happens. And I cannot definitely talk about that because that is spoilers, but it is so good. It is kind of like this companion-ish kind of vibe to the Very Secret Society, so I wasn't sure if I should mention it, but I am going to mention the ones here, and it was so good. I have been having high expectations for this book since I found out about it, and all of them were 100% worthy of this book. In April, I really loved I couldn't pick. I really loved The Night and the Moth and A Serpent Called Mercy, or The Serpent Called Mercy, and Holy Terrors. Holy Terrors is the last book in the Painted Devils Little Thieves series, so I didn't want to mention that, but oh my god, this sequel, or the series ender, was so good. I will link down below actually my video review of that one, because it was fabulous. I didn't want to pull it off my shelf, my Illumicrate edition, because it was behind my Illumicrate edition of Little Thieves, but it was so good. It was everything I wanted and 100% more. And so I couldn't also pick then between The Night and the Moth and The Serpent Called Mercy. So The Serpent Called Mercy is basically kind of this thing where she is going to be going into these gladiator style battles against magical creatures to kind of make her fortune. And she's going to be paired with her old friend who used to be part of different kind of fights and didn't want to do that, but he's going to do that to help her in the gladiator arena style. So it is obviously very action-packed, very adventure-packed, but also what I think I love the most about this one is its discussion of mercy, which is weird because it's like a gladiator-style competition where essentially they're kind of there to kill these magical creatures. But this idea of mercy and ambition, right? Ambition has made her so hungry, not only for survival, but also for success, for security. But when you're on this path of ambition, and specifically for her as well, is there a place for mercy at all? You know, where is the place for mercy in this competition, in this world of debt and exploitation, where everyone's kind of just like climbing on top of each other to survive? What is the value of mercy and what is the place of mercy? And The Serpent Called Mercy really beautifully discusses that in a way that I was not expecting for a story about gladiator fights, basically. And secondly, The Night and the Moth, which I don't even have my copy of. I have the Barnes & Noble's edition, which is stunning. I couldn't find my copy at the moment, but The Night and the Moth, this was so good. I've really loved One Dark Window, I think. I've really loved Rachel Gillig's previous works. Rachel has such a great way of doing really unique world building, and The Night and the Moth 100% is it. It's basically this woman, and she is this priestess person, and they have visions in this kind of religious order, and then she realizes, based on this knight who comes with their new king or whatever, and realizes that there's more to know about her whole religious order, the whole kind of world as a whole, because her fellow sisters, who are all kind of seers, they're gone. We don't know where they're going, but they're kind of dropping like flies, and she's like, what is going on? Where are they? And the religious order person's kind of like, shh, no tears, like, it'll be fine. And she's like, these are my friends. Like, what happened? What happened to them? What will happen to me when I'm done serving this religious order? So that's basically the premise of The Night and the Moth. I really loved our companion, the gargoyle. We all know that. We really love him. And this really kind of deeply discusses what it's like to kind of have the rug pulled out from under you and not have to question every single thing that we built our world upon. Also, the ending, oh my god. Like, come back to me when you've read the ending, because I feel betrayed. Anyway, if you love this idea of a character who really has to interrogate every single thing about not only what she thought about the world, but kind of the world as a whole, you have to read The Night and the Moth. It is so good. In May, I also had a bunch of different favorites, and I couldn't pick. So let's just start off with a sequel. I really, really loved The Lore of Their Graves. As I said, this is a sequel, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it's a sequel to The Sins on Their Bones, and I loved this one. I adored The Sins on Their Bones, and I wasn't sure really how the sequel was going to be, but it was so good. It talks about power, responsibility, and leadership. What makes a good leader? Is a good leader going to be a leader who sacrifices everything they've ever loved, like hollows themselves out to be a good leader, or is a good leader also going to be happy? That is The Lore on Their Graves. So good. I loved it. Like, chef's kiss. Anyway, in terms of my other favorites that weren't sequels, I loved two kind of sequel starters. Well, three. They're all sequel starters, but one YA as well. So the YA that I wanted to chat about is Skip Shock. I chatted about it in my May wrap up. It was so good. I love time books so much. And Skip Shock was like amazing. Basically, she gets on this train thinking she's just basically going to go to her next end of term or whatever. I think it's in the UK, so I guess they say end of term. And then actually ends up on the train to kind of a different world. So she realizes as she gets off this train or as she's actually on the train, and they're kind of like, where's your ticket? And she's like, what? This isn't my ticket. And then they're kind of, like, that's not your ticket. We might have to take you away, basically. And so one person steps in, Moon, that's the character. Moon steps in, and he's like, no, she's with me, like, it'll be okay. And then she finds out that in this world, or she's been in a world, right, on Earth, our world, but it's connected to all these different other worlds, and in the other worlds, time all moves at different speeds. We're at a time in which our day is 24 hours, but in other worlds, days are 6 hours, 5 hours, 30 hours, whatever. And so these trains move between each of the worlds. And so she finds out that she shouldn't be there and wants to go home. But when she finds out she wants to go home, and Moon's kind of like, okay, I'll try to help you, they also find out that she's actually really important, and she should be part of the rebellion, and the rebellion will help her take her home. But then she kind of realizes, well, should I actually just be part of rebellion? Because she realizes that the world that she has come into, or the world she was in, so the world she was, in now, which she... It's kind of trippy to talk about, but she realizes that it's deeply, deeply bad. Like, there are really, really ways in which these travelers, like Moon, travel between worlds as traveling salesmen, basically, and they're being exploited, and also dying for this, because they basically get jet lag, essentially, but it has physical ramifications on the body. So not only is that exploitation going on, but actually she realizes that Moon used to be a part of this group and his whole family, which used to be I don't know if I should really talk about this, but anyway, they used to travel between the worlds not needing trains, but then their existence was kind of wiped out by this organization that have these trains. So that's another aspect to it as well. And so this is such a perfect example of like the way that science fiction can talk about our world, talk about rebellion and power structures and corruption. And it was so good. Like, I loved this so much. It kind of reinvigorated my sci fi feels at the moment. And it also reminded me why I love timey-wimey books so much. And the other two adult books are Arcana Academy and A Dance of Lies. A Dance of Lies, basically, she's been imprisoned for a crime she didn't commit, and then the leader guy who basically imprisoned her is like, I let you out from your imprisonment, but you have to dance for this competition. Well, it's not really a competition, but you have to dance for this court kind of function, and you have to pretend you've been okay, and I haven't been imprisoning you for a really long time. But because she's been imprisoned for so long, she essentially is suffering from chronic illness. She can't really dance for that long. Her muscles have atrophied. She's exhausted more often. This main character's experiences are directly inspired by the author's experiences with chronic illness. That's kind of the main plot of A Dance of Lies, except then she meets this other guy who is a rival prince, and she's supposed to spy on him. And so she's met him, and she realizes that not everything she knows about him and his role within the world is how she thought. And, like, should she keep spying on him? There's also feelings. Like, that's A Dance of Lies. It was so good. It swept me away. I loved the dance magic. I loved the place of dancing within the world, and it was just so beautifully well thought out. And I loved the swoony characters. This was another ending where, like, come talk to me after you finish that ending. And it looks at love, and it looks at what these illusions we have and we present of ourselves to other people. And it was really, really good. I loved it so much. And the last one for May is Arcana Academy. I've really loved Elise Kova's books in the past. I've talked about that on social media a lot, in release or in anticipation of Arcana Academy, which is a tarot card inspired world. She is coming out of jail. So both of these are very similar in that sense, I guess. She's coming out of jail. She has this ability where she can ink tarot cards, and that is something that not everybody can do, but she was taught to ink tarot cards. She's broken out of jail basically by this guy who's like, come help me, like, ink tarot cards and also topple the government, but topple the government through this academy that you have to go to make it look like you're learning to ink tarot cards, even though you already know how to ink tarot cards. So it's an academy setting, but it's also looking at rebellion. I loved the interchange or the dynamic between these two characters. I loved also the tarot card magic. Elisa's so good at making unique magic systems, and that's honestly why I've loved a lot of these different books of the year. Is unique magic systems are like my kryptonite. I love them so much. And Arcana Academy is the start of a series. I'm really excited for the rest of the series. I've loved Elise Kova's works, and it's the start of a series that is going to chat about rebellion and what kind of sacrifices we will be expected to make. If you love a character who's kind of like, what has the greater good ever done for me? Then you will love Arcana Academy, because she is basically like, everyone keeps being like, oh, we have to do it for like the rebellion or for the people or for the greater good. And she's like, what? The greater good has not served me. I've been in prison. I why would I do this? To keep putting my neck on the line for all of these lofty excuses, these people who don't care about me, like, for the world. What has the world ever done for me? That's Arcana Academy, and that's why I loved it. And now let's chat about June. In terms of sequels, Flight of the Fallen, which is a sequel to Road to Ruin. I was just looking at it behind me. Road to Ruin. It was really, really good. I really, really loved Road to Ruin. It has this, like, Mad Max vibe to it. It had a poly, like, love thing. It had queer characters. And Flight of the Fallen was so good. It has these discussions of what would it be like to admit that we are worthy of love. Also, like, the world expansion that happens in Flight of the Fallen was so good. Basically, in the first one, we had this idea of people who had power, people who didn't have power, and what that meant. And I don't want to discuss it too much because I don't want to spoil it. But Flight of the Fallen takes that concept in the world and just pushes the boundaries even further in a way that is so good. I loved it so much. The character dynamics were so good, and some of the world things that happen at the end were really, really good. I think I filmed a TikTok of this one where basically the emotional roller coaster I was on at the end was almost like tears, laughter, tears, happy, sad, angry, tears. Like, it was just a lot. And the one that I want to chat about for June was If We Survive This. I will link down below my June wrap up. This is the one that was the freshest to me. Basically, it's this zombie book where the main character has OCD. So the main character has always been thinking about what would happen if the world ended, and then the world ends with zombies. And she hears this radio call from her dad, which is basically like, I'm where you always were. I don't remember the exact words, but basically like, come find me. And so she decides to do that with her brother. In their kind of road trip zombie story, she ends up also meeting her former kind of childhood crush, and they all make their way up to this cabin, or they try to. But what I really enjoyed about If We Survive This was it looks as well in chapters of flashbacks about all of the different ways not only she worries about her world ending because of her OCD and the anxiety and fear she has over being safe and what safety means to her, but also in the different ways that our world ends more often than we think. It ends when our loved ones pass away. It ends when our hearts are broken. It ends when we become someone different. It ends when we find out something really awful about our family. Our world ends in so many different ways, besides also then there are zombies. And it just, Raquel's book just really beautifully goes into that. It is so good. My favorite of Raquel's book, hands down, and I really, really loved it. And so those are my favorite books for 2025 so far. I'm sorry this was really long. I tried to keep it quick. I tried not to go too much into everyone. But these were my mid-year check-in. It's going to be really difficult to obviously do my end of the year, but I'm always glad to do these mid-year check-ins because it always gives me a head start on the emotional angst that it will be like to have to do the end of the 2025 year wrap-up. I hope you have a really great rest of your reading day, week, month, and 2025 year where you will discover favorites. Let me know down below what some of your favorites were for 2025, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!